In one single year, 100,000 people died from drug overdose. In that same year, over 40,000 gunshot deaths happened. 500% increase in child labor violations since 2015. These aren't statistics from a developing nation struggling with basic governance. No, these numbers come from the most powerful empire, America. So today we're looking at this annual human rights reports on America that was actually made by China. Look, I know what you're thinking. Why should I trust China's takes on American human rights? Well, if you're American, you can't really say that. You're part of the most misguided, misinformed, and miseducated population on the planet. You don't even know your own condition. But here's the thing, we're not taking their word for it. We're just looking at the data, which come almost entirely from American sources. FBI statistic, Census Bureau data, Supreme Court cases, etc. The Chinese just compiled it in one place and said, hey, look at this. And what they created is essentially a mirror, an unfiltered look at the American empire from the outside looking in. Because here's what empire throughout history have struggled with. You know, the gap between what they preach to the world and what they actually practice at home. Rome talked about civilization while crucifying slaves. Britain spoke of progress while starving colonies. And America? Well, America promotes democracy all the time, while they have oligarchs by elections. They preach human rights while running the world's largest prison system and lectures about rule of law while the police kill over 1,000 people every single year. The numbers just keep increasing. It was 800 just a few years ago. This isn't about hypocrisy. This is about imperial decay. When the contradictions become too obvious, when the gap between rhetoric and reality grows too wide, the empires lose the most powerful weapon they always had, which is legitimacy. Let's start with American so-called democracy, or what's left of it. $16 billion went through the 2024 election cycle. Super PACs, or what is called Political Action Committee, contributed $7.7 billion. Individual donors dropped over $100 million on presidential candidates, and at least 135 billionaires publicly choose their candidate. Well, what kind of democracy is that? Think about that for a second. 135 people, not 135 million, not even 135,000. 135 individuals have enough wealth to meaningfully influence who become the most powerful person on earth. That's not democracy, that's auction. And it gets worse. While billionaires are buying elections, regular Americans are being shut out of the process entirely. 24 states have passed voter suppression laws since 2020. People of color are 4 times more likely than white citizens to lack required voting ID. 84 lawsuits were filed over gerrymandering, with 48 involving racial discriminations. Here's the imperial contradiction. How do you promote democracy globally when your own system is essentially legalized bribery? When half of your voters think the system is rigged and 62% believe the government only serves the elite, the vast majority of people don't even believe in this democracy. Now, let's talk about the economy, the supposed free market of American capitalism. You know, the top 10% of households control 67% of all wealth. The bottom 50%, they own 2%, 2.5 to be exact. Let me repeat that. Half of the population of the wealthiest nation owns 2.5% of its wealth. Here's the thing about imperialism and colonialism. They're fantastic for the people who actually get a cut of the profit and benefit. But for most Americans, you don't see a dime from all that global exploitation. All you get is the blowback, the hatred, and a shit reputation around the world. Almost 1 million Americans are homeless right now. That's up 18% in just 1 year. the biggest increase since they start keeping a record in 2007. What's even more disturbing is that many of these are working people. They have jobs, but they still can't afford housing. The Supreme Court's response? In July 2024, they ruled that cities can fine, arrest, or imprison homeless people for sleeping outside. The same economic system that creates homelessness throughout unaffordable rent and stagnant wages criminalize you for the very condition it created. You're allowed to be made homeless, but you're not allowed to exist as a homeless person. Meanwhile, 13.5% of households face food insecurity. That is extreme poverty. 1 in 8 American families that don't know where their next meal is coming from. Almost 14 million children go to bed hungry. This is what happens when you prioritize global empire over domestic welfare. You spend more on your military than the next 10 countries combined, while your own people sleep in tents under bridges. But here's where it gets really dark. When you have this level of inequality, when these many people are struggling, you need enforcement. Lots of it. The police kill over 1,300 Americans every year. Did you hear what I just said? They use violence against at least 300,000 people annually, with 100,000 sustaining injuries. This level of violence is abnormal. For the rest of us, you look like you're living in a war zone. African Americans are killed at 3 times the rate of white American, so you know this is systematic. Native American at 2 times the rate, and Hispanic at 1.3 times the rate. The Memphis Police Department arrested 180 black children for curfew violation versus 4 white children. In Texas, black defendants are 16 times more likely to get the death penalty in federal trials. 61% of all juveniles sentenced to life without parole are black, despite being 13% of the population. And if police brutality doesn't keep people in line, there's always prison. America incarcerates 40% of the world's prisoners, 1.9 million people locked up. That's more than China, which is 4 times the population. And there's another layer to this racism. They call it the ecological apartheid. 80% of toxic waste workers are deliberately placed in black, Hispanic, and low-income neighborhoods. Louisiana Cancer Alley, predominantly black communities, faces cancer 7 times the national average from industrial pollution. 4 million African Americans were forced to relocate due to pollution, with another 2 million permanently displaced between 2023 and 2024. And then there's the border. Oh, you love to talk about that. America tasting ground for authoritarian control. The US runs the world's largest immigration detention system, where over 14,000 people were thrown into solitary confinement between 2018 and 2023. Average stay, 27 days. A quarter of them, 25%, were held over there for over a year. The conditions are medieval. Filthy drinking water, contaminated food, people chained up for hours during transport, unable to use the bathroom. But the children, over 300,000 minors just disappeared between the same period, 2018 and 2023. Released to unvetted sponsor, many ending up in forced labor or sex trafficking. Child labor violation increased 472% between 2015 and 2023. And what's Congress is doing about that? Weakening child labor laws. 30 states have introduced a bill to roll back protection since 2021. Indiana extended legal work for 14 years old. Florida lets 16 years old work overnight shift 7 days straight. I'm not even against children working, but let's be real about what's happening here. Pretending 14 and 15 years old are helpless babies who need protection. America doesn't give a damn about protecting children. This is about exploitation, pure and simple. They'll cry about child labor when it's convenient, but turn around and let these corporations, these monsters, exploit desperate families who have no choice but to send their kids to work in dangerous conditions. See, here's what people don't understand about the imperial decay. It's not just when the empire gets corrupt or lazy. It's that the very mechanism you need to maintain global dominance eventually turn inward and devour the domestic foundation that made the empire possible in the first place. You need massive military spending to project power globally. That money comes from healthcare, from education, from the infrastructure. You need surveillance capability to monitor enemies abroad. Those same tools get turned on your own citizens. You need harsh immigration enforcement to maintain the border, while those techniques migrate into general policing. You can clearly see it happening right now in Washington. They are deploying an army unit and military vehicles in the city. No, you definitely colonize. You are under military occupation and you don't even know it, just like I said in the beginning. America spent over 800 billions annually on defense. It maintains military bases in over 70 countries, while its own infrastructure is crumbling. It lectures the world about human rights while running torture facilities in Guantanamo Bay for over 20 years. You have to understand that the domestic problems we're talking about aren't separate from the global empire. They're the price of the empire, and that price is becoming impossible to hide. Here, what's really happening? America is losing. They have already lost the narrative a long time ago. It doesn't even realize it, and that's what's extremely sad about this situation. For decades, the US controlled the global conversation about human rights and democracy and freedom. They were the ones pointing fingers, issuing sanctions, and decided who gets to be called civilized. But now, every country America tries to pressure can just pull out these reports and say, hey, look, why can't you fix your own house first before criticizing us? China didn't just compile statistics. They weaponized America's own data against its moral authority. And the truth is that is working. The question isn't whether America can fix this problem. The question is whether it can fix them while maintaining global empire. Because historically, no empire has ever managed both. They either choose domestic reform and lose global dominance, or they choose empire and watch their domestic foundation collapse. The evidence suggests America is choosing empire. And if that's the case, what we're witnessing isn't dysfunction, it's the managed decline of the world's last superpower.